This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
So welcome everybody to tonight's April 1st Plan Commission meeting. A few details to rattle off here real quick and then we'll get into it. So the Plan Commission attempts to conduct its public hearings in a relatively informal manner. Within the constraints, we must deal with all the issues before us in a fashion. First, we allow the applicant the opportunity to speak, and any folks that would like to speak for or against an item then have an opportunity to present their case. We ask that you put in with your use of time and not to replicate the previous speaker's comments. Also like to mention that tonight's Plan Commission is broadcast via Valley Media Works on channel 994 and FM 101.9 and valleymediaworks.org. If you plan on speaking tonight, we do have some slips at the back of the room that we ask you to fill out and turn into Ned up front when you come up here. If you are going to speak tonight, please give your name and address prior to speaking. I think we'll get to it. First item tonight, maybe before we do it, Pat, item 1 and item 4 are related, unless any members have any objections. We'd like to handle number 1 and 4 back to back. That's all. Number 1 is a public hearing for recommendation to City Council, and it's for rezoning 111 Niagara Street from RM to P Public. Mr. Radley.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good evening. Tonight is the public hearing for the rezoning of 111 Niagara Street from mixed residential to public. The location of the property, number 1 and number 4, as Jamie mentioned, located right here. This is a zoning map of the area, the First Avenue, Niagara, and Chippewa Street, across from Owen Park. And then the aerial, again with First Avenue, Niagara, and Chippewa. The property is owned by the City of Eau Claire. Plan Commission directed staff to initiate the rezoning of the property back on March 4th. The property was purchased by the city back in 1997 using FEMA funds, as the individual properties that were within this block were within the 100-year floodplain, and then upon acquisition, then the city cleared the properties to the current vacant lot status. Use of the FEMA funds restricts the future structures from being constructed on the property, and since that time the city has basically just provided some minimal maintenance to the site in terms of some periodic mowing of the grass there. A group from the historic Randall Park Neighborhood Association has approached the city with a plan to enhance the parcel with some plantings and also possibly some additional encouraging some public use, such as yard games, such as coop, to make it more of a welcoming public space for the city. The neighborhood, Randall Park Neighborhood Plan also includes a recommendation within the plan that the city should work with the neighborhood and try to develop a plan to make it more of an asset within the neighborhood. As noted back at the March 4th meeting, there is some parking that's going on kind of in the southwest or the west side of the property. We did some research on that. We did go out and contact a couple of the landlords in the area to see, and they indicated that there is, first of all, we don't have any formal agreement with anybody for that parking. So then when we contacted some of the landlords, they indicated that they're not formally telling tenants to use that spot either. So it appears that it's been somewhat kind of taken over voluntarily by a group of people, because that actually is getting plowed and things like that. So as part of this process to develop the park into this area into a public park, we will take a look at that parking, more than likely sign it so that it would be signed for people that are going to be using this public space rather than for, probably right now it's being used for people that are going over the university. Now, the Waterways and Parks Commission reviewed the application. They recommended approval. The commission did suggest some possible addition of some benches would be something to consider, possibly some small identification signage to identify it actually as an open space and encourage greater utilization by the public. And as Jamie mentioned, there is another item on the agenda related to our 5-year parks plan. Did you want me to go into that right away, or? Okay. In terms of the item number 4, then, regarding the 5-year parks plan, as part of the process to accommodate the request of the neighborhood, staff would like to amend our 2018-2022 Park and Open Space Plan, basically to officially recognize this parcel as a public open space, and then we would add it to our Park and Open Space inventory, and then we would classify the site as a special Park and Open Space area. It's one of the multiple classifications that we have for parks and open space. This classification best fits this particular property because of the FEMA restrictions on the property limiting structural improvements. So it really is kind of a unique area. Our 5-year parks plan is used by the Parks Division and the Forestry Divisions to identify where our park and open spaces are, and it also is used as a requirement by the Wisconsin DNR for funding in terms of grants and projects like that. So it's important that we, if we do rezone it, do classify it as a park, that we do add it to this parks plan. So if in the future we wanted to apply for grant funds, the site would be eligible. And then the Parks and Waterways Commission also recommended approval of adding it to the parks plan. With that, if you have any questions?
Questions from Mr. Ivory? Last time another question came up was the naming of the park. It's not going to be Owen Park West.
It could be. Actually, the city has a formal process for naming our park and open space areas, and it involves, once there is a recommendation for a name for a park, then that is brought to our Waterways and Parks Commission. They have a discussion on that. If they feel that it seems to make sense, then they will recommend that, and then what happens is there's a 60-day comment period where people can review that suggestion for the name, and then it comes back to the Parks and Waterways after that 60-day period. They'll review the comments that have been received. If it seems to be favorable, if the name seems to make sense, then they will make a recommendation on that name. Then it goes on to the City Council, and they actually make a formal motion in terms of what the name of that park and open space would be. In fact, they're doing that process right now with the area where the veterans are looking at putting the Veterans Tribute Trail. We're looking at going through a naming process of that right now.
Questions? I'm scrambling.
List on the overall city plan of parks, and actually Owen Park is not colored in green.
Well, I will correct that tomorrow.
We're going to add a little touch of green across the street, and that we might like the whole park itself to be also the color green.
You mean on this map here? Craig?
No, well, the one that's in as part of the amended parks map.
Oh, okay. I'll take a look at that. That definitely should.
It's the urban park special areas and athletic fields.
Oh, you know, actually what that is that particular map is specifically identifying the special areas in our urban parks. There's a separate map that identifies our community parks, and Owen Park is one of our community parks.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misread that listing.
So we actually do have it, right?
On the other map.
On the other map.
Thanks, Pat. Oh, Jeremy, sorry.
Mr. Chair, I was wondering, Mr. Ivory, about the utilities that the city may have in that area. I know that there's a sort of gas pipeline on the south edge on the boulevard, but is there anything else that's kind of happening over there that we should be aware of?
Jeff, did you want to respond to that, or Jeff Pippinger, our Community Services Director?
That is a gas regulator that you're looking at there, so that is something that's owned by Excel. We do have some service stubs into that property, primarily older stuff. There is a newer one, a newer water service that's coming off of Niagara Street. That was dated it's a rather newer line. The line coming off of Chippewa Street is old, so at some point that would be abandoned. Again, there wouldn't be any need for sewer laterals going into the lot, so anytime that we'd come by there, we'd abandon those. But there isn't anything specifically that is concerning to us in that lot.
Any additional questions for? The city was the applicant. So again, this item number 1 and item number 4 are for public hearing. So if there's anybody that'd like to discuss either item, now's your opportunity.
Helene Smyer, 320 Broadway Street, Historic Randall Park neighborhood. I'm just here to support this because I happen to be the point person organizing this project. We were given a grant from Invest Health as our first revitalization project. Not enough for a house, but enough to beautify a piece of the neighborhood. And so we went with that. I thought it was going to be pretty simple, but it's not, because it's FEMA land. And then we do have 2 master gardeners who are going to do the design. So fortunately, it won't be what I wanted, was just spreading seeds for wildflowers. But it will beautify the neighborhood, and since it's really an area where a lot of the city people see it because of the parades and the, First Avenue, we want it to be special. So we're working with Parks, with Jeff, about a water source, and we're pretty excited about it. So we just wanted to support it, and I hope that you support it too. Naming rights, I think we ought to name it the Pat Ivory Park, because he's the one who put it in our plan, I think over 30 years ago, to do something with that space. So we're just here to keep Pat happy. So thank you to the Park District for cooperating with us and helping us, and letting us know it's not as easy as we thought it was going to be, but if it isn't planted by this spring, it will definitely be next spring, and they're helping us with trees and good prices and all those things. So thanks to the city and to you for supporting it, I hope. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? Anybody else would like to discuss this item? Anybody would like to discuss item number 1 or item number 4? All right, I'm not seeing motion on number 1. Yes.
I'll move to approve. Well, are we doing both together, or are we voting on them one?
One at a time.
Okay.
Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Not seeing it, so let's call the question. All those in favor, recommendation of City Council on the rezone? Aye? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. Then we'd be looking for a motion on number 4. That'd be the 5-year Parks Plan Amendment. For motion on that one. Great.
I'll move to approve.
Motion. Second. Discussion on that one. I'll call the question on the Parks Plan Amendment. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks a lot. Talk to the Pat Ivory Park. Right, item number 2, another public hearing for recommendation to council, rezoning R1 to P Public on the Visitor Center and admission west end of Roosevelt and Park Avenue. Driver.
The University of Eau Claire and Ayers Associates are requesting to rezone property from R1 to P Public, and then also for the approval of a site plan to construct a new visitor center at the southwest corner of Roosevelt Avenue and Park Avenue. This is on our citywide map. This is the location of where the visitor center would be. On the aerial, this is where the parcels are located here. With Roosevelt, Park Avenue. There's residential to the east, and then to the northeast. Little Niagara Creek runs through the area right here. Putnam Park, University to the west, University to the north. The actual parcel that we're really talking about tonight is on the north side of Little Niagara, so it's in this area right here. And then this is the zoning map of the area. This shows that the west portion is currently zoned R1, so these three platted lots here are R1. The east side is already zoned public, so as part of the process that you'd be reviewing would be rezoning this R1 all to public, and then the site plan that we'll be talking about. This is the actual site plan. Site plan calls for a two-story visitor center building that would have a first floor footprint of about 8,000 square feet. The building and the parking lot would be set back 50 feet from the ordinary high water mark of Little Niagara, which is in compliance with our waterway guidelines. This line right here is the 50-foot setback that goes through Little Niagara, sits down in this area right here. There is also a 50-foot setback required for wetland areas that's administered by the Wisconsin DNR. A small portion of the parking lot is within this setback. The university is requesting a waiver from the DNR for that. That line is kind of a little harder to see, but it's right here, comes up, and then it crosses the parking lot, and are right in that area right there. The university notes that the new parking lot will have a reduced encroachment into this wetland area in comparison to the existing parking lot. So regarding parking, the site plan shows a 22 stall parking lot that we were located to the east of the building, so in this area right here. This will involve the redesign of an existing parking lot that had 18 stalls. There's a small visitors building that will be removed. That building would be right in this location here. And then the plan calls for reusing the existing 24-foot driveway curb cut off of Roosevelt. The zoning ordinance as it relates to parking requirements for university facilities states that due to the unique parking needs for colleges and universities, that the university should provide the city with information related to how a new building impacts on the parking demand. So there's not a specific parking requirement. It's based on information provided by the university. In this case, the university notes that the staff of the admissions department and alumni foundation will be relocated from Schofield Hall to this new building, and that the primary admissions functions that presently occur at Schofield Hall and Davies will be relocated to this new building. The vacated spaces from these personnel moving to this area will be utilized by existing departments with no new staff expansion plan. In addition, the university notes that the existing staff that will be relocating to this building will continue to use the parking facilities that they currently use if they are driving to work. Bicycle parking is also provided for the building. Bicycle parking is located right in this area here. There's parking for about 10 to 12 bicycles at that location. The site plan shows multiple pedestrian connections to university facilities, both to the west and the north. This includes sidewalks, pathways, and multiple crosswalks that cross Roosevelt Avenue, actually the former Roosevelt Avenue that was vacated back in 2018, that provides access to Snyder Hall to the north and then the university to the west. So this is one of the crosswalks located here, one located right here, going across Roosevelt, and then one located right here at the intersection here. It's recommended that another crosswalk be added. That would be in this location here. First of all, we'd like to have a sidewalk extended on the east side of the driveway over to the east property line, because at a future date, the city will be looking at the possibility of extending the sidewalk on the south side of Roosevelt with the roundabout that's going to be constructed next year. That sidewalk might not be installed at the time of the roundabout, but it will be at the time that Roosevelt is being constructed. As part of that, then, we'd want a pedestrian ramp that would extend to the north that would link up with the sidewalk on the north side of Park Avenue. And then we would like the site plan to show a pedestrian ramp at this crosswalk right here. There's one that's shown right here, and we think that probably was just omitted off the site plan, that it was the intention to really have that on there. The landscape plan is shown here. Landscape plan shows a mixture of street trees and shrubs, as well as plantings, beds along the foundation of the building, and then a variety of pavement materials and textures that are proposed. There's a number of different walking textures in this area here, the sidewalk here, and then this plaza area that's located over to the west of the building, and then to the south along the creek in this area here. Lighting for the site will provide a variety of fixtures, including pole-mounted lights for the parking lot area, and then more pedestrian-scale bollard-type lighting and the plaza areas in this particular area here. The site plan also shows two decorative walls in the front of the building. One would be located right here, and then one would be located right here. These walls would be internally lighted with LED fixtures. Staff feels due to the proximity of the residential neighborhood that the lighting for these walls should be subdued, not cast glare, and not change in brightness or in color. The building elevations that were included in your packet are shown here. The top one is the north or the front elevation. The bottom one here is the south elevation. Waterways and Parks Commission had a discussion regarding the elevation that faced the creek, which would be the south elevation. Staff feeling that the design fully meets the Park and Greenway guidelines in terms of buildings facing Parks and Greenway areas, providing a brick facade, a number of windows, and then this area here you'll see it in some other renderings, but this is an event area that has glass on three sides, so this front sun faces to the park area, which I think meets the requirements of the Greenway guidelines. Some more artist renderings here. This is taken looking from Roosevelt and Park at the building, and this is one of those lighted walls that was referred to. And then a view from campus, so this would be looking back towards the southeast. This is that event area on the second floor that again has glass on all three sides. This is the plaza area that faces back along the park, public area. And then this is the west elevation here, again looking at that glass on all three sides, and then that public plaza area back along the park area here. There were some floor plans that were shown. I won't go into a lot of detail on that. This is the second floor, again showing that event area here. So the area that has the glass all the way around it. A number of offices back in this area here, and there's windows for each of those offices. And then this is the first floor of the building. Again with the event area here, a lot of public areas along the front or in this area here, and then that plaza located in this area right here. plan also shows there would be a sign, a wall sign that would be located on this wall here facing Park Avenue. The proposed rezoning and site plan is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, which shows the area as school or for university use. And then also the Third Ward neighborhood plan that was put together back in 2001 shows this area as part of the university campus. The Waterways and Parks Commission reviewed this last Wednesday, and they recommended approval. As I mentioned, they did have some discussion about the south elevation of the building, but in the end they did recommend approval of the project. In regarding grading and drainage, the project narrative discusses the storm drainage for the project, and the plan is for a biofilter to be located in this area here that would drain from the building before it got into the creek. The stormwater management report and stormwater calculations will need to be submitted to engineering. Water and sewer is available to the site. Regarding traffic, traffic generated by the proposed improvements should remain relatively constant compared to the current conditions. Based on the information provided by Ayers Associates and by the university, there is no new staff or departments planned to occupy vacated areas of Schofield Hall that will be moving into the visitor center. And then lastly, the site is serviced by several bus routes, and we don't anticipate any change with transit services. In the staff report, conditions for the Plan Commission consideration were included in a letter for your consideration. And those conditions included City of Eau Claire Engineering Department approval of the drainage calculations and the drainage plan. Signs would be reviewed by permit. Exterior lighting would meet the city's exterior lighting standards. The lighting for the decorative walls shall not cast glare, shall be subdued in intensity, and shall not change in brightness and color. Approval of the wetland permit by the Wisconsin DNR. And then the extension of that sidewalk on Roosevelt that would be located to the east of the driveway. I can show you around this. And that would be the sidewalk right at this location here over to the east property line, and then the pedestrian ramp going north up to Park Avenue. So those are the conditions that we suggest. Now with that, if you have any questions.
Any feedback from the neighborhood association or?
It's my understanding that there are some representatives from the neighborhood here. It's my understanding that they have taken a positive position on the site plan.
Questions for Pat?
Do you know where in the process they are on the DNR waiver?
There's representatives from Ayers and from the university. I think they can tell us where we're at on that.
Okay, good, thank you.
Questions? Is the applicant here?
Good evening.
Thanks.
Yep, you bet. I'm Angie Goodwin with Ayers Associates here representing the university. I also have Mike Brindo with campus, and Travis Schroeder is our architect for the project. So in response to the 6 comments from city staff, certainly the university is in concurrence with all of those comments. I would just like to make a clarification on item number 5, approval of the wetland permit by the DNR. We are not proposing to fill in the wetland at all, so we do not need a wetland permit. That wetland setback review comes up through the DNR stormwater permit that we need to get, so we're just looking for a no practical alternatives review of part of that parking lot within that wetland setback, so it's, maybe that wording could just be modified to adjust that. I did want to make one other comment. We did show those bike parking stalls at the building. After we have submitted this, the university has asked if we could possibly consider to not have those, because as part of the Roosevelt reconstruction that was just done last year by campus, they show up on sheet C400 that's in here, but just across the street from here, right next to Schneider Hall, there were 33 new bike racks added, so parking for 66 bikes. And campus has noted that those are not anywhere near full most of the time. And so I guess I'd just like to request if we could consider, if campus does not want those stalls here because they have so many right across the street, if that would be acceptable. Oh, I wanted to address the question too about the timing of the DNR permit. So when we submit to the DNR, we have to have our final calculations for all of the stormwater that's required, and the site plan throughout the design process keeps changing and tweaking and adjusting as we get comments, etc. So we really have to wait until we get to the final site plan, which is due to be done hopefully near the end of April, and so we'll submit at that time. So we should get that DNR response within 14 days after that submittal. So by about the middle of May, we should have that response.
I have a follow-up on that. So, did I understand correctly that it's just the parking lot that encroaches a little bit on the setback? The building does not?
Correct. The building does not at all.
And the parking lot looks like it doesn't encroach much.
Generally, the back 8 stalls do. You're actually seeing the ordinary high water mark setback here, the wetland setback. Can I draw on this map?
Yep.
Pat? This is the wetland setback, if that helps. Yeah, that helps. So that's the wetland setback, so those back 8 stalls is what's encroaching on it. The existing parking lot actually encroaches on it more. So we definitely had a goal of reducing that, so we're actually improving the situation with this.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Ms. Goodwin. I guess regarding digging a little deeper into that wetland setback of 50 feet, I'm not really sure exactly what the DNR considers in that decision, but have you considered doing like permeable pavers for that, or a permeable parking lot in general for that space?
Yes, absolutely. You could do permeable pavers. There's also a permeable asphalt that is more commonly used in parking lots rather than the permeable pavers. However, I would not recommend that to campus in our northern climate here. I believe there's maybe a few other projects that have tried it, but I don't know of any projects that the clients are very happy with and have been successful just because of the heavy sand salt use and the plugging of that and the constant maintenance that's required. It would, if it were done, it would likely plug and not really function as a permeable pavement in my opinion, so I would not recommend that. But it definitely was considered, and that'll be part of our, we'll have to discuss that when we submit to the DNR why we do not recommend that.
I have one more question.
Sure.
I hope this is my last one. Could you explain what exactly a biofilter is? And is that something that remediates a little bit this encroachment on the setback?
Yeah, definitely. That biofilter essentially collects runoff water from the parking lot because that's where your contaminated stormwater, and by contaminated it's total suspended solids that are collected from everything that falls off of your car as you're on that parking lot, all the silt and sand, etc. And so all of that parking lot will go through that biofilter before that, and the biofilter is an engineered system that is designed to remove those total suspended solids, and so it's got a couple feet of an engineered material with a little, mostly sand, so that water will infiltrate and actually collect those solids, but it's got a little bit of topsoil mixed into it so plants can grow on it so that it can be established and not cause other erosion issues. And so yeah, that is that target, it's required regardless because we're disturbing more than an acre, and so we're required to do that treatment. However, it's specifically picking up that water from that entire parking lot, which includes that area that's in the setback, so we think the DNR will look at that favorably, and that will help our approval of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering, Ms. Goodwin, about the crosswalk, particularly on the far west side, and how it has that angle up. off the exit, presumably where the large tours would be leaving from and entering the campus. Seems to be a really pretty wide stretch of the road because it includes the drop-off zone, and I guess I'm a bit concerned about pedestrian safety there because at least the way it is now, cars kind of whip around that corner, but it does. I was just there right before arriving here, and it has pretty good sight lines right now.
Yeah.
But there's trees that are proposed to be planted at that corner too. So I guess I was interested in hearing more about how you're going to make sure that traffic is calmed and also aware of more pedestrians in the area as a result of this project.
Sure, and that wider area that you're talking about, so the alternative pavements are really covering this whole space. And the whole purpose of that wide alternative pavement is for traffic calming, so that it's a primary pedestrian facility and a secondary vehicle facility. However, there is a lot of vehicle traffic through there. There's no doubt about that. So, I mean, we anticipate the majority of the traffic will be directly coming into the doors here and going out. This additional pavement is actually an additional cost that doesn't really need to be there, but we've recommended it to campus to create that traffic calming with the different materials there. That'll be a mixture of bricks and concrete through there. So that's the whole reason for it, is the traffic calming, and you're correct, it is a wide area, but that's the reason why.
Mind if I have a follow-up question? I guess I wanted to ask about the trees specifically, and how you'll assure that the sight lines will be maintained so drivers can see pedestrians that may be waiting to cross.
Sure, and the trees are all planned as deciduous trees, so they have the tall trunk, and the leaf cover is up higher, well above the sight lines of any vehicles through there, so I'm not at all concerned about the trees causing any impact on those sight lines. They're pretty spread out. And again, it's just the trunk that you're going to see.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Ms. Goodwin again for being patient with me on my questions. And I guess I was wondering, the design of the building, obviously in a very environmentally sensitive location next to Putnam Park and the Little Niagara. What kind of design elements are in the building? And maybe the architect would be able to answer that too. That kind of that focus on the environmental sustainability goals of the university and kind of green building design, energy efficiency, any renewable energy associated with this project.
Yep, and I think both Mike and Travis might have some input on that for you.
Travis Schroeder with Ayers Associates. To answer your question, we did take a look at a LEED early on in the project. Obviously, due to budgets and stuff, we did not pursue any type of certification for this project. However, we still use some of the ideals of LEED moving forward. For example, on the electrical side, all lighting is going to be high performance LED. We do have a lower power density of less than 1.2 watts per square foot. We do have occupancy sensors as well as daylighting sensors, so when it gets too bright in the room with daylight, the lights can shut off or will shut off. Also, the university has requested we provide 3, I think, future electrical vehicle power station conduits. We're not putting the infrastructure for the stations at this time, but at least the conduit is there, so we don't have to rip up the site to provide it later. As far as plumbing goes, we are providing low flow water closets that are 20% less than the LEED requirement as far as water use. And as far as the big energy systems, we did not pursue any type of solar voltaic, solar thermal, anything like that. We are tied into, the universities are tying into their steam water or chilled water and steam. So really trying to improve the efficiency of the building's MEP systems, or at least mechanical systems, really tough to do when we're tying into that system and not being its own standalone system. So we did look at a lot of different LEED things and applied as many as we could. Some are just impractical at this site, in this building. Oh, you want to follow up? All right.
Just as a follow-up, we're also working with our student office of sustainability on some initiatives that they're interested in incorporating into the building. And those aren't finalized, but an example of that would actually be putting in an electric car charging station or putting in the infrastructure. They're also very interested in ensuring that we have plantings that are suitable for the site. So, and those are ongoing conversations. And the students would be funding it separate from the budget for the building itself.
Questions for applicants? Come up. This is a public hearing, so if there's anybody here that would like to discuss the item, now's your opportunity. Come on up.
Well, two birds with one stone tonight. I'm Kevin Rosenberg from 219 McKinley Avenue, and I'm here to talk about this item and another item. Has it been 5 years already since I first addressed this group of people about the dorm that was supposed to go there? I know a couple of you were on that planning commission, and there was a lot more people here from the Third Ward Neighborhood Association. And we lost that vote. And the chancellor met with us, and he took the dorm off the table, and now the university is going to get this wonderful welcome center there. I'm excited about it. The secretary of the Third Ward Neighborhood Association and myself met with the good folks that are here tonight about 2 weeks ago, I think. And the only thing we're concerned about is the Park Avenue Roosevelt intersection with the addition of a roundabout is going to send more traffic down there. The visitor center, I understand is going to be kind of the same as it was before, but there's obviously going to be a little bit more activity there. So I think there might be some issues on that intersection as we move forward with the level of traffic. We may have to not have parking along Roosevelt just because it's a narrow street and it's difficult to make that turn. And the only other issue I can see coming up on this is the lighting of it, possibly trespassing into the homes that are back here on this corner. With the new LED lights, they have a lot of power to them, and we did have some issues on Summit when they put the new lights in for the bridge. The Neighborhood Association will take this issue up next Wednesday, but I anticipate that we're going to be quite happy with it. Any questions?
Questions? Yes, James.
Thank you.
Because I live on McKinley, and every day I come out of my house, I take the McKinley Alley onto State Street, and when I come home, I take a left back into my alley. So now when I come down the hill and I hit that roundabout, I'd be silly to drive through the roundabout, stay on State Street, and then try and make a left, especially if cars are queuing up there, as they may be at 5 o'clock. So therefore, from now on, I go down Roosevelt. And so does everybody that uses my alley, and possibly anyone that was using McKinley, and possibly anybody that was using the Garfield alley, and possibly anybody using Garfield. The interesting thing is, the students come down Roosevelt and make a left turn at State Street. And, that's like the hardest thing to do at rush hour. I wondered why they did that, but if you go back and look at Park Avenue during the afternoon, it's almost like a student mall back there. So I don't think they want to drive up to get to Garfield or to get out the right in, right out on Park Avenue itself. So that, the change on Park Avenue just happened a while ago, so that's also increased the way the traffic moves back there. Thank you.
Again, this is a public item. If there's anybody here who'd like to discuss this item, opportunity. Chance, anybody like to discuss this item? Anybody? So we'd be looking for a motion. Yes, Jeremy.
Make a motion to discuss it with the staff recommendations, with including the 5 bike parking locations on site.
You want to have those stay?
Yeah.
On site. And as far as the DNR language brought up, so we have a motion, looking for a second. Yes, Terry?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. We got a motion and a second. How about discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to explain why I support it with the bike parking, because I do think, you know, it helps encourage people to choose to bike to a location if the bike parking is closer. And also it makes sure that people have an alternative when they may be otherwise considering parking their bike on a pole or a tree or something like that. So I think it should be an adequate amount of spaces at the location as well. And just in general, I also want to speak to the project. I am a bit concerned about the crosswalk on the west end, but I think that, you know, I really appreciate like all the work that's gone into like kind of creating a different culture in that space, I guess, with all of the crosswalks and really the way the building is oriented. It's really going to make it feel like you're going through campus rather than around the edge of campus when using Roosevelt Avenue. So I think my concerns are addressed a bit, but I think we need to kind of keep an eye on that and consider, maybe the university will need to consider putting some additional signage for pedestrian crossing in that area. But I'm also pleased to see that the neighborhood association finds this to be a great use of the space, and it doesn't necessarily change the amount of people coming to campus to this spot that is already pretty congested. So just wanted to show my support for it.
Great. All right, let's go ahead and call the question. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good luck. Let's see, so we are on to item number 3, full recommendation of City Council, another public hearing item. And this one is a rezoning and site plan for the Artisan Valley Forge Studios on Dovey Road. You got this one?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. And before you this evening is a request by Mr. Greg Johnson to rezone 1106 Mondovi Road, which is Artisan Forge property. Thank you, Pat. So here just a little bit. Get an item 3 on the agenda and on the map here as well. Excuse me. Right there. The request is rezone the property from C3H to C3P and to adopt a general development plan with a site plan related to setbacks. The property itself is about 3.4 acres in size. The required setback along Claremont Avenue, as you may recall, is 70 feet. The applicant is requesting a reduction in the setback to 20 feet. Which would also allow for the possibility of installing a pole sign closer to Claremont Avenue. Staff does support the reduction in the setback to allow for the construction of the proposed canopy and outdoor restaurant seating structure, or pergola, as the applicant notes in their narrative. But again, allowing that reduction along Claremont only for that structure. Prior to any other changes in setbacks, a comprehensive review of the setbacks for all the properties of the city, the subject parcel, is necessary. Show a vicinity map here, give a better picture, hopefully. It's a little legible enough. If you recall back a few meetings ago, we had a discussion item before the Plan Commission talking about setbacks, building setbacks along Claremont Avenue throughout this entire area. Again, the property in question here is hatched. You can see slightly faded here, but this is the 70-foot setback, 70-foot setback, and a 30-foot setback on the interior roadways. We can see just generally where you see the 70-foot setbacks. So with that, staff would recommend that the reduction in setback should be limited simply to the structure that's proposed at this time, and that would allow us to do additional study, as we last discussed, for looking at a more overall comprehensive approach to consider all the existing setbacks for a larger area bounded by Claremont Avenue, but also Hendrickson Drive and Craig Road as well. So with that, again, the site plan itself, moving on to the site plan portion of this. The site plan shows a covered structure. I really have to zoom in here. See if we can do that actually. This is the overall site plan map, just to show again, the yellow highlighting here is that proposed area. More specifically, again, it's on the north side here of the building, showing generally where that would be located. The covered structure would extend out from the north wall of the building just over 12 feet and have a width of approximately 50 feet. A structure would provide outdoor seating for the new coffee bar, Skill Shot. And kind of rewinding a little bit, the Plan Commission last approved a site plan for the expansion of the Artisan Forge Studios building back in 2016. That site plan included a 2-story 52 by 125 or 6,500 square foot building located to the north of the existing building and the parking lot expansion. So you can kind of see that here as part of that last expansion of the building and the property in general. The proposed canopy outdoor seating area would be located again on this north side of the 2016 expansion. Within the landscaped area that's currently located there, it would not impact on-site vehicle circulation. Adequate vehicle parking is also provided. Again, as noted, staff does support the reduction in the setback to allow the construction of this outdoor seating. This is in your packet as well. However, staff recommends that the reduction, again, in the setback be limited simply to this structure at this time. Again, the parcel as well as the abutting parcels, as I showed earlier, have that 70-foot setback, again, rather than doing the piecemeal reduction here, especially to the requested 20 feet. We would recommend against that. We'd rather look at, again, all those parcels that front along Claremont Avenue. So with that, I can stand for any questions.
So we got the rezone, and that's
yes.
Site plan where are we formally voting on a setback reduction? Is that what you're proposing, or?
It's a modified setback simply for that, again, staff is recommending simply for that outdoor eating or outdoor seating area.
But not to go as far as
Correct. We wouldn't recommend, for example, 20-foot setback for the whole property. It'd be simply this about 12.5-foot expansion of that building, again, at this time. I know the applicant is interested in some future signage, but this, again, to allow this part of the project to move forward, we're here tonight with this kind of middle ground, as it were, and then looking at that comprehensive study of the overall area for setbacks in terms of perhaps modifying the underlying zoning district to reduce the setback from that 70 feet. If not, again, not just for this property, not just for this project, but all the properties in the general area. And if in doing that, it would be reduced from the 70 feet, perhaps that would be sufficient then for the applicant simply move forward with their requested sign or any other expansion in this area.
questions for, yes, Terry?
So you would be looking at reducing the setback from 70 to like 55 to make it at nearest 5 feet?
Roughly, it actually may even be closer to 60. Yeah, so again, we didn't get within inches of this, so that's where we're looking at simply this general development plan really dictating what that setback is in this specific area.
you know what setback the existing building is at now?
Approximately 75 feet.
75?
Right, 75.
60 would include the...
Correct.
enough to include
Yeah,
the 12
yes, you're correct. If we were to pick a number, 60 feet would be adequate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Allen, I was wondering about the, you said that this seating area exists within the plantings right now that are outside the building.
Mm-hmm.
Will the seating area be sitting on top of like a curb, or is it kind of elevated from the driving area?
That's a very good question. I would defer to the applicant perhaps on the kind of their construction proposal. It shows it pretty much at the drive lane, I guess the elevation as it were. So you're right, it does not show anything around that in terms of what's impacted with the landscaping. But I would defer to the applicant on those specifics.
Any additional questions?
I just want a little clarification on the actual difference of what is the C3H versus C3P. What a difference is it?
Sure, the C3P, the P designation is that planned essentially overlay. So it essentially incorporates the general development plan as they're proposing here into the overall zoning. So we're essentially approving the that expansion of this seating area into the zoning category, as it were. So the P is that, like other P designations throughout the city. So we're changing the H, highway commercial, to P, which is still essentially highway commercial, but with this specific adjustment in the setback. As Mr. Peterson noted, more specifically mathematically, would be about 60 feet versus 70 feet. All right.
You fill out the yellow sheet.
We'll come back. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I needed to field a question from who first on the... Jeremy?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, just the curb. If there's actually a curb that this seating area will be sitting on, or if it's at grade with the surface of the driving area.
It will be slightly elevated. It's going to be a poured concrete patio that will be set at the same elevation as the floor inside. And then that'll come out, and because that's pitched, it's going to be up maybe 8 inches or something. But then it's going to be, it's solid concrete. It's piered. It's solid. It isn't just like a wood wall. So it's a structure. That structure, we're not intending to hook to the building. It'll be on footings in the ground. So we expect it to be fairly strong and robust. If you're thinking like cars backing into it with people being on there, that has been considered. Shelter Architectures that that designed this. Oops, sorry. Did discuss that a little bit. I don't know, but I don't have a actual cross-section detail of exactly how that's going to work. But the intent is that it's a concrete patio. Right now, it's just more like a planting bed, and it's just full of 1.5 inch rock right now.
Go ahead.
Actually, I have a follow-up question to that, Mr. Johnson. Are the doors that are currently off of Skillshot, which I was just there at opening day, and it's pretty cool. Are those like considered an emergency exit?
So they are an emergency exit. However, if you look at this top guy right there, you will notice that there isn't and this was talked about, but it's an exit, but it's not an entrance. So you can't enter the onto the patio from the front parking lot. You have to go in the building and then through, and then you can go out onto the patio, and then you have to go back, you're supposed to go back through the building for egress. In the event of an emergency, you can see right here, what this is this is split. There's two doors. So there's the big set of doors right here, which is the public doors that goes into the skill shot. And then there's a single people door down here that actually accesses the kitchen, okay? But what you can do is, in the event of an emergency, is you could get off of this patio by going down, walking around the staff-only wall, and then coming out through this gate. Does that make sense? So it'd be just they explained the egress to me, and it kind of makes sense to me, but I said what I'm worried about is I don't want people buzzing off of this patio into traffic. And they said, no, we're going to keep people on the patio. They're going to have to go back inside. However, in the event of an emergency, if people need to get out, it can function as an egress. Okay. There was one other.
I do have a quick question. So staff is kind of trying to punt a little bit, so to speak, on the setback. Are you okay with just going forward with the patio and kind of doing this 40-foot request on the table for a little bit longer?
I'm getting some screaming tenants because we don't have any signs out front. So I don't know what the timeline is to get that addressed. I did submit a proposal for, I want to do like a 40-foot sign with multiple tenants on it. I think that went through. We would really like to try to move forward with that, not too far down the road. I've got a lot of high-dollar tenants here that don't have any way to advertise that they're there. So just note that, please. I appreciate you being as understanding as you have been for this whole process. And if we can get this patio thing going, that is the most important point right now. And
I know it's on their to-do list.
Yeah, and we can be the guinea pig for that. That's fine, to see how that works. But let's not let that sit too long if we can. We'd really like to move forward with some other stuff there too.
Any additional questions for that?
All right, wonderful, thank you.
Public hearing again. So if there's anybody here who'd like to speak for or against the project, here's your opportunity. Speak for or against? I guess so we'd be looking for a motion on rezoning and site plan. Separately or all together? Rezoning would be going to the council and the site plan together. We're looking for a motion on the rezoning.
Move approval.
Approval.
Second. No, that's just for the rezoning.
It's rezoning, that's not the site plan. Yep, so we got a motion and a second on the rezone. Any discussion on that item? Let's call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. So now we got that covered. Now we'll be looking for the site plan motion.
I'll move approval on that too.
Just a patio, not the setback at 20 feet.
Correct. Second. Now, does that mean we reduce the setback to 60 feet?
Yes, it does. So the site plan reduced to 60 feet to accommodate the patio expansion. Motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Yes, Craig.
I'm really not in favor of any intrusion into the setback until we have clarified the full extent of this, because this is a very center of a long stretch of buildings that all have respected that setback, including signage, including billboards. You could go a long way down the street before you find any interruption to this this distance off of the Claremont edge of pavement. I'm really reluctant to provide any adjustment to that until we've really settled whether or not we're applying this to a very large stretch of that entire district plan. I'd be much more open to the adjustment at the other end of the block or the other end of the parcel, where they've got the sort of double whammy of a frontage road and still retaining that 70-foot setback off of a little bit of that frontage road and a cul-de-sac that notches their parcel two different ways. I'm not really much in favor at all of any extension to the north, considering the density that's already of that frontage that's consistent all the way up and down the blocks.
Call the question then. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Congratulations. Then it takes us to number 5. Public discussion for approval by Planning Commission. Alpine Road, 2510 and 2536 locations.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. This is again item 5, located northwest part of town, more specifically. This is a request for approval of a sign plan for West Park Commercial Development located at that northwest corner of Claremont and Alpine. Should be a little bit better map here, just a moment. Again, it's request is for multi-tenant sign, again more specifically located in this corner. The applicant has provided a the site plan of the proposed area. It would be identified in general. Again, the applicant, Stratford Sign Company, has submitted a request to approve a master sign plan for the 2-building commercial/industrial buildings located at the northwest corner here, again as identified on the map of Claremont and Alpine. The addresses themselves are 2510 Alpine Road and 2536 Alpine Road. Again, as you see in the aerial, the development does include those 2 buildings. One that fronts on Alpine and one that fronts more so along North Claremont Avenue. Site does include one West Park subdivision sign located at the west entrance to the development along Alpine Road. Sign code standards for the Gateway West Business Park, as you recall, were recently amended by the Planning Commission to add a provision applicable to those multi-tenant buildings. We included that information in your packet as well. What that does is allow for business identification ground sign, maximum size of 150 square feet, maximum height of 15 feet, and a minimum setback of 15 feet. Approval of this multiple tenant ground sign is subject to approval of the Planning Commission here this evening as part of a sign plan. So the ordinance, or the sign code itself was, not sign code, but the covenants, I should say, ordinance to amend the covenants for Gateway West Business Park were amended, and now the applicant is coming forward more specifically for this individual sign for the multi-tenant purpose. Again, I can show more specifically the proposed sign as submitted. The applicant does note that the overall size of the sign does meet the modified standards, the 150 square feet and 15 feet in height. And again, as shown on the drawing site plan, it does meet the minimum setback of, the 15 feet as well. Again, as identified in their drawing. So again, with that, this sign, as you can tell, would provide for that multi-tenant listing for the businesses located in either or both of those 2 buildings. Certainly, there are more images that were provided by the applicant in your packet. I can certainly show those if desired. One in particular does show a little bit more with the aerial photo, the proposed location of the sign at this kind of the southeast corner of the parcel itself, northeast corner of the intersection. I'll just leave the overall sign itself up here for reference, and with that, stand for any questions.
Questions?
Thank you.
The applicant's here. Come on up.
Good evening, Dan Drexler, Stratford Sign Company, Stratford, Wisconsin. So we were here a couple of months ago with the amendment to the sign ordinance, and we went back and in order to meet those requirements, we adjusted the size of the sign, the setback, and the square footage along with the height, and so we come back now tonight with the revised version of that to meet the code. And I guess I don't really have a whole lot more to add to that other than the fact that the sign design and size and height was changed from where we originally started to meet the requirements that the city had asked for. So.
Questions for the applicant?
Okay, thank you.
This one's public discussion, so looking for a motion. Yes.
I'll move approval.
Motion. Discussion? Yes.
Thank you. I neglected to mention more specifically there are two conditions of approval staff would recommend. So that this is the only tenant listing ground sign permitted for those two buildings, and that the more standard the base of the sign be landscape first. Just want to clarify that there would be two conditions as part of that.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval with the recommendation.
Second. Thank you. So any discussion on that? Let's call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Yes, thanks. Thank you. Item number 6, public discussion for a recommendation to City Council, easement at Prairie Circle North.
Use this to zoom out. Oh, there it is. Okay. Tonight we're looking at a utility easement for our water service utility that would serve the southeast portion of the city, specifically Prairie Circle development. This area of the water service is serviced by the Oakwood Hills Water Tower, which is approximately at 1,157 feet in elevation. The Prairie Circle housing is at approximately 910 feet to 922 feet in elevation. So there's quite a drop from the Oakwood Hills Water Tower down to that development, which causes some pressure issues with the water service. In our 2014 water service system evaluation, there was a study. The study identified this as a location for a pressure reduction location. Here you can see the study is showing that there's 90 to 110 pounds per square inch pressure in this area, and a pressure reduction system would allow to maintain pressure for that development of homes. The easement is being provided to the city at no cost to install the equipment in this location, which is related to our water utility service and included in our current CIP process. And staff would recommend the approval of the easement to move forward with the project of the pressure reduction system.
Questions for Leah? He's the applicant on this, so I think you're looking for a motion, I assume.
Yes.
All right, so look for a recommendation of council. Recommendation. Second on that? Yes, I'll second. Discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That takes us to our discussion and direction. Then you got that? Mm-hmm. We'll see.
Try this with the computer. Eligibility. This could work. It could. Or it could get messy. I'm good with it. All right. Until it gets messy, right? Okay. So the Third Ward Neighborhood Association requested, actually it was several years ago, an update to the neighborhood plan, the 2001 plan. And the Plan Commission at that time, there was also a request from the North Riverfronts neighborhood, and Third Ward, they had decided that was more of an immediate need. So staff worked with that neighborhood association and developed their neighborhood plan. And so now we're coming back to the Third Ward to work on their plan. We started in August, September of 2017. So fast forward here now, we actually have the draft plan ready for you. We sent it out a couple weeks in advance because it is a long document, and so we'll go through that tonight. For some of the newer plan commissioners, what is a neighborhood plan? Just to give you a little bit of background, hopefully this is coming through for you. So it's an element of the city's comprehensive plan. So you have to find consistency with the comprehensive plan, that it's working together with our existing plans, not in violation of that. It is adopted as an element to the comp plan. Generally has about a 10 to 15 year lifespan. Again, the 2001 plan is up for revision. Its primary goal is to assist in identifying issues and then seeking solutions to those problems, and outlining the responsible parties, whether it's the city, the neighborhood association, and so on. And we would wish that the plan was a cure for all problems in the neighborhood, but it's not. And so you'll see that these neighborhood plans, for example, the North Riverfronts plan, we're on our 4th update already. That a lot of these issues, especially related to aging of housing, is a very chronic condition. And so some of the same major issues that the Third Ward identified in the first plan have come up again in this update to their plan. So the process in terms of how the city works with neighborhood associations to develop the plan is, since it's authorized by the City Plan Commission to actually begin the work, it is guided by the Plan Commission in terms of ultimate direction, seeking your approval, and then also City Council. But a neighborhood actually has to request the services of the city in the first place. We have to determine if there's actually a real need there. If it's a brand new neighborhood, there might not be a lot of issues yet. So we need to really think about that carefully, and then we bring that input to you, and you authorize if we should actually engage with the neighborhood association to develop a plan. So you directed staff to do that in 2017 in the summer, and then we formed a steering committee in September of 2017. And this is really looking at trying to gather a lot of different voices within the neighborhood. For the Third Ward neighborhood, we really did try to seek out a few renters. And we did get one on the steering committee, but the person had left after the first meeting. So, and that's pretty typical. This steering committee represents a few members of the neighborhood association, and then also some other residents. It's all homeowners. And so we try to do our due diligence to try to seek other voices that may represent the neighborhood, whether it's an elderly, disabled person. We try our best to try to get those different perspectives. So we worked with this committee, which averaged about 7 or 8 per meeting. We had 5 meetings with them. And typically how we set up these meetings is we organize, we give them some background, kind of baselining, grounding in terms of, you know, this is your neighborhood if you don't know. Start to identify issues, and again, if they're chronic, they should be well understood. And then looking at goals and strategies in the second or third meeting, and looking at different engagement opportunities. Like for the Third Ward, we had really good responses for a neighborhood association or a neighborhood survey. We also held some coffee chats at a local cafe, and some other ways to engage the public. And so then putting all that information together, the steering committee that we form with the neighborhood, that helps to give staff the input in terms of what we should actually be writing. And we're looking at all the other input from the neighborhood association or the survey, and different the past plan, the comprehensive plan, city departments, folding in all the good plans that you guys approve into their plan as we put forward a draft. And so we met with the steering committee March 21st to get their input, and I included their minutes, their recommendations. We didn't get through the whole plan, 85 pages, we got about to page 70. So we did ask for more comments. We didn't get many comments in regarding the rest of the plan. We did get information from the university about their concerns about the plan. Generally, they were nothing significant, so we'll just make changes in terms of the final draft. So then tonight we are seeking your direction, and then we would set up public hearings with you and the city council, and generally this whole process takes about 1.5 to 2 years. Wanted to note the last plan success. The university has respected the boundaries of the neighborhood, and that was a concern from losing some of the housing that they lost in the years before the first plan. And so that has not happened, but also, as you can tell on campus, a lot of great improvements like you approved tonight with the new alumni center. So the neighborhood really feels that's an asset to the Third Ward. Most of the lower campus is in the neighborhood. One of the major accomplishments was a downzoning from properties that were more medium to duplex zoning, R3, R2, down to R1, more in the southern section. The neighborhood kind of has 2 different identities, and we'll get into that more, but the northern part closer to downtown is more dense, more rentals. The part to the south is more homeowners, single family stock. So that really locked into place that. As you know, zoning can't restrict rental or home ownership constitutionally, so we haven't observed any change to rental patterns. The pattern is actually a little more than what we identified in 2001. But again, you're next to the university, you're next to downtown. And those, like I had mentioned, the 2 kind of identities of the neighborhood, you have more single family homeowners to the south and then renters to the north in the apartments. And enhanced housing inspection and rental registration, that was passed not too long ago, where the health department is in the lead with that, surveying all homes, rental and owner occupied in the city. This year they're going to actually be looking at the properties in the Third Ward, so we'll have more data on the condition assessments of the homes within the 3rd Ward. It also, by City Council, approved this registration program, so now we have a database to contact landlords if there are any issues related rentals, and some other provisions that the neighborhood was very happy about. And then some major improvements from infrastructure, Water Street Bridge reconstruction, Summit Avenue, Thorpe Commons, all of those projects have been a benefit to the neighborhood with new and improved infrastructure, accommodating more walking and biking opportunities too. And then more mixed results on the whole on-street parking regulations, and you'll find in our major recommendations how we want to look afresh at that situation, and how can we actually look at maybe possibly a parking permit program. So last plan successes, chronic concerns. Again, we folded these into this new plan update, maintaining the quality housing stock. Again, we have some properties that are 1850s towards the north, and preserving the architectural history. We have 2 different historic landmark districts within. And then again, concerns about rental levels, 65% or so right now. So it's not quite 50-50, but you really won't find that in any neighborhood. Usually you find different kind of extremes. On-street parking congestion is noted, traffic is circulating inside the neighborhood. And a lot of that is stemmed by students looking for parking stalls. Also cited with the snow issues, the policy about getting into parking stalls and people's parking for over 24 hours, how that was hard for the snow plows to remove that snow within those streets, then causing difficulties to navigate through that street. So reconstruction, so looking at State Street, that project, and obviously that's had a different path in terms of engagement with city engineering, and city council has made a decision there. So those type of projects are basically folded into the plan. If you looked at the plan, it had a lot of yellow highlighted language, which we'll tweak based off of what council decided on that roundabout on Roosevelt. And then again, making sure that UWEC boundaries are maintained, which the university has in their master plan to respect that. Obviously crime and code violations too. So those are the major concerns. There's lesser concerns addressed as well. But what we wanted to do, you know, if there's a resident or plan commissioner or whoever is wanting to use this document, you know, we provide an executive summary so that at a glance you can kind of tell what are the major concerns in the neighborhood. So that got washed out. This one looks better, it looks like. See, I came prepared. Okay. Is there a focus on this? Can you? Here we go. Not liking my finger. There we go. Okay. This is a little bit better legibility. So, you know, we try to just graphically map the major goals of the plan. So just looking at here, this first area in the red, that is an area that the zoning is much different than the southern section, as I mentioned, kind of 2 neighborhoods in one. And so that line pretty much mimics the zoning in terms of R3, R4, even Central Business District. And so in that area possibly it says support redevelopment in this area consistent with the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan basically notes that same line, and I just want to address that. So that line, that red line, is mimicked by the comp plan. So it's consistent in terms of medium to high density residential in that area. Whether it redevelops or not, that's a private sector decision. You know, if they assemble properties like you've seen JCAP assemble Wilson Square, that is just on the outside of the neighborhood, but that's an example. So that's a major policy in terms of dealing with growth. And then there's also the steering committee wants to support the little neighborhood niche there, make sure that there's just continuing investment within that small commercial center. The bicycle and pedestrian plan notes some different improvements along Washington Street here, and then obviously along State. And the blue section, most of the blue section will be addressed here in this upcoming reconstruction project. Actually, only really down to here, or so Bartlett, right? I believe it's Bartlett Court is where the project ends this for the time being. So those improvements will be made. Also to look at enhancements to the parks, so better infrastructure at Demler and possibly some kind of light on the land, eco-friendly type improvements on Kappas Park, where that could be maybe a boardwalk or some interpretive signage about that these are sort of the springs for the Niagara Creek. So that was brought up in some of the neighborhood engagement. And also to look at, as I noted, this consider residential parking permit program, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And then to maintain the existing low density area within those properties that were downzoned to R1. So to stay status quo on that. One divergent policy in the plan is to not downzone this northern section. The 2001 plan actually noted to downzone this to a lower density. And with the comp plan, as I showed, you know, it's guiding it high to medium. So that's what we first look at. And then when this was downzoned 2006, 22 nonconformities were created for those properties. And so whenever we look at a large downzoning, we want to understand the consequences to real estate properties. And in this area, you would actually have a lot more problematic issues with non-conforming setbacks, land uses. So it would carefully have to be studied. And when we talked to the steering committee, that we felt that the zoning, the current zoning matches the comp plan to stay consistent, but to use some different policies within the plan more related to form and design and what we call gentle density to respect the adjacent properties, so that if a proposal comes in to, if you will, right size it for its given site. So they felt that that was a useful way. And that's an example of how the neighborhood association can use the plan to make decisions and recommendations to give to you about what they think about a given project. So we're trying to make these plans to be helpful for the neighborhood to make recommendations on. That, and then just as noted before, maintain the current campus boundaries with the neighborhood. So in a nutshell, that's the plan. There's a lot of other smaller policies, but this is the overview. Technical difficulties. Okay. And when we met with the steering committee on the 21st of last month, we had good input in terms of what they would like to see to the draft plan. So it was brought up that there's a section about the original need for the neighborhood plan, and that back in the 80s, the city and the neighborhood association were working together, and the process actually fell. Unfortunately, they mutually agreed to not move forward. So it was brought up that history should be still added back into the plan, which we can accommodate and put in the beginning. To drop, they recommended to drop this recommendation accessory dwelling units, the R1, R2. I know the Plan Commission has looked at this consideration in the past too, with household trends changing, with whether empty nesters moving back with maybe one of their children. And I think they felt that the concept is worthy and all, but the practicalities in terms of regulating it is difficult, especially after, you know, say the situation with person would sell the house, and then you've got this accessory dwelling unit, and maybe it becomes 2 renters instead of owner occupied with accessory dwelling unit having a renter. So they felt that that policy should be dropped from the plan. It was also noted to address a little bit better front yard parking when it comes to projects or existing situations, and to research and develop some sort of parking permit program. We talked about maybe resident only or resident mostly, with some allocated stalls possibly for purchase, that those stalls, the funds for those could help with enforcement, or to be a little revenue to help maintain the program. It was identified that the council did cut funding for parking enforcement, so currently parking enforcement is not at the same level it was in terms of funding, but there's a lot of different ideas of how to address parking in the plan as well, if you'd like to get into that. And then in the redevelopment section, looking more at language about revitalization in terms of softening language about blight and removal of properties. Again, not to promote that, you know, tracts of parcels of land should just be cleared, but that, you know, they recognize that private sector will, you know, redevelop if there's, you know, if it's economical, but to not so encourage that, just to let the private market do that. So soften the language, more revitalization instead of redevelopment in the northern part. Again, to respect some of the existing, there's a few single family homes there that are pretty noteworthy still. And then one of the policies that we put in, support housing choice policy B1 as a lens to evaluate proposals so as to not conflict with the plan. And that's really getting at this these national trends of affordability, just concerns with household changes in terms of, you know, the single family home, the American dream is not the status quo for all households anymore. Household demographics are rapidly changing. Families are not, you know, the nuclear family that a lot of the housing stock has been built for. So whether it's a studio apartment or a 1 or a 2-bedroom apartment, those type of things. So try to look at how the neighborhood can allow housing choice for all. And actually the 3rd Ward does a very good job at that, probably one of the best neighborhoods in the city, because if you think about it, you have multifamily housing from the public housing, which houses a lot of disabled, and you have a lot of apartments addressing whether it's elderly with Grace Barstow or students. Then you've got a lot of duplexes, you've got a lot of single family homes, so there's a wide range already in the 3rd Ward, and it's recognizing that. But this lens idea is to help guide the association so that if a project comes up that's maybe an apartment building kind of right on the edge, that transition zone between the northern part and southern part, how can the neighborhood plan help them to judge that by still being mindful about, you know, household demographics, but also that it's consistent with good design and density that respects what's already there. So we try to tease that out, you know, in the language so that they can fall back on that, and you can fall back on that to make good decisions. So that's that. Proposed schedule. So tonight we are seeking your direction on the plan generally. If you want anything out, if you want to add something, if you want to modify something. Of course, edits and grammar changes are welcome. We always love that. Kathy Mitchell is a whiz like that in the past. So if you have those, we'll gladly take them, but it's not needed. And we have the Neighborhood Association requested more time, and the chair is here to speak to their concerns. So this may look like May 8th or June 12th. We'll work with the Neighborhood Association in terms of giving them adequate time to review the plan. And then we would set up the public hearing, mainly based off of tonight's feedback from you. If you feel that, yes, there are changes needed, but, you know, generally a public hearing, that's the next step that you want to see when it comes back to you. We would set that up after we're after we're through meeting with the neighborhood association. So that would be a date that we don't know at this point, but if you feel comfortable enough for a public hearing, that would be the next step. If not, we could bring it back to you after we get direction from the neighborhood association. They make a vote, a recommendation vote, and we supply that to you, and then obviously you approve it and recommend it to city council. And then city council would have their public hearing. So there'd be a couple other opportunities for the public to engage there. So concerns and direction tonight, there's 4 chapters in the executive summary that I highlighted. If you have any concerns about the introduction, the neighborhood profile, the planning issues, that's more background and laying the foundation of why the improvement strategies should be, why they're listed. And so we're really looking at the improvement strategies of what do you feel should be modified, should be changed. Do you agree with the accessory dwelling units to be dropped out of the plan, things like that. You've gotten the steering committee's input already, so hopefully that provides you with enough detail to give us some direction to staff. So that is all I have right now.
I have a comment and a question. On the accessory dwelling units, I remember us having this discussion about that before, and part of me kind of likes the concept because family dynamics are changing and stuff, but then there was always that concern about just turning into a little rental community. And I'm not opposed to rental property, in general. I just think I agree with the neighborhood association. My question is, and I know we've discussed the parking permit program before, or at least I have. I know it's been an issue that's kind of been around for a while and tossed around. We talked about it in the northern part of the Randall Park neighborhood as well. I'm just curious if the university had any, in general I do support that, but I'm wondering if the university had any input on that.
Sorry, on what issue?
On the parking permitting.
Yeah, there wasn't any comment on that the program idea. Okay. Yeah, they're trying to solve the parking situation. They have their own study going on right now, which sounds like it's delayed, but they're basically looking at all their parking lots, adding up all the stalls, trying to see what's used, and then thinking of some different strategies, like maybe assigning students particular lots, and that's where they can only go. But again, it doesn't seem like it addresses a larger issue, which some of the students, they'll just circumvent that whole process and try to seek free parking in the neighborhoods, whether at Third Ward or Randall Park. So they feel like it is a complex issue, but they don't financially are not able to, from what they've told us, to fund the parking ramp. That was brought up several times in the neighborhood survey, and we suggested a little bit in the plan as a strategy to consider, whether that's a large parking ramp or a 2-story parking ramp. I know that in the past, the Third Ward Neighborhood Association, I believe, was there was some talk about like maybe a 2-story one at the Hibbard, so that it was a little more scaled and not a large monolithic structure there. So those are the comments that we've got back from the university on parking.
Okay, thank you.
But I know the steering committee that we worked with in city, we want to work with the university to try to address this.
Interesting thing, I've been recently touring a few of the other university campuses around the state, and I was on La Crosse campus for one of the few times recently, and they have the slightly more complex issue in that they have city streets running through their campus. So some of the campus streets are campus permit parking and some of the campus streets are city permit parking within the campus itself. Luckily, we have a pretty isolated campus compared to the city side of things. We have cities surrounding the campus and not too much overlapping with possible permit style. I know it was really convenient down there that they've gone to one of those kiosk style local lot type permits where you can just put your card in and type your license plate number in and park in a whole lot at a time. That's showing up in a lot more areas. I suspect if something like that were available in our general mix of the city, it would be very easy to apply it in that third ward neighborhood, but only if we have the system in place.
Yes, it was brought up by the steering committee to look at the lacrosse pilot. They're doing some research on that right now as well, so we'll touch base with their planners.
They were mentioning that they were going through a change there as well because of how they hadn't gone so far yet as to limit parking to one side on residential streets near the campus. It was really wild to be down there shortly after one of those snowstorms this winter with pretty much reduced all to one lane, but two directional travel.
Yeah, and that was a concern with our streets too, with the one side parking and then the large snowbanks and trying to navigate through. So we'll reach out to the lacrosse staff, and in this policy A3, it's hard to read, but we talk about these other city strategies, and we'll be looking at some different things like license plate recognition software, possibly some meter technology too. So again, the neighborhood plan, it's more to cast kind of, the ideas and the policies, and then where it's actually executed usually is in, the actual ordinance or the project or the program. So we float a lot of different things out in this other strategy category here. Other input. Yeah, that item was not actually addressed in terms of the steering committee. What we have in the plan is that to relook at those properties that they would come into those districts. Yeah. Yeah, the landmarks plan needs to have a revision there. It's kind of an outdated plan, and so that would be the chance to look at strategy and how to address that for those private property owners. So.
Chair, and thank you, Mr. Noel, for all your work on this. Certainly to the Neighborhood Association and the steering committee for this plan. I guess one of the things that I was pleased to see is that there's already been a decent amount of work and staff interaction on the idea of some sort of permit program for parking, because it's probably one of the biggest things I hear about, and just a wide variety of parking ideas for how to alleviate some of the problems in the neighborhood. And I went to UW La Crosse for graduate school and started a transportation committee there at UW La Crosse over 10 years ago that in some form still exists, that has worked through some of these issues. So I there are certainly a good example of the direction we could go, and obviously they haven't figured out all of their problems, and I don't think any community has. And last week I was just at UW-Madison and met with their commuter solutions staff to talk about what they do and with working with the neighborhoods, as well as just all the bike and pedestrian and transit planning. So I can share some context with you in that regard, but just happy to see so much work being done, like as part of this planning process that will help me make future decisions and also see how I can help. But just want to acknowledge that. On the specific topic of accessory dwelling units, it seems that it would be helpful to have even more information. I know we have talked about this topic a few times, and a few times before I started on Plan Commission, but particularly on the difficulty of regulating. That seems to be the main concern, because it sounds like there's openness to it in terms of the affordable housing discussion, in terms of people being able to live with a relative, or maybe make their own house more affordable to live in the first place, to be able to have that option. So I'm kind of still open-minded to that, but want to recognize the concern over regulation, whether that's even possible.
Yeah, and I know, I think it was Ryan Petrie did some research for you, not maybe a year ago, last August, okay. And yeah, it's a complex issue, because I mean, a lot of the cities that we see, they have a conditional use permit, so it regulates it. It's got to come before you guys, and then you can add conditions on there. But those run with the land. So again, you know, it's probably more of a legal question if you tie it to a homeowner. That's what I've seen cities do, is they tie it to a homeowner occupied dwelling, the principal structure, and so if it's always owned, then that condition is being met, and the accessory dwelling unit has the ability to be a rental. But if that property is sold to be a rental, then they would lose their conditional use permit. So legally, you know, that we'd have to research that more. Or Scott, if you have experience elsewhere.
No, yeah, exactly, Ned. And I think too, you were also referring back to 2013. I was looking at the notes as we're talking here. 2013, there was that discussion about conditional use permits and that enforcement side of that. And exactly that was the issue then, and therefore decided to leave the code unchanged at that time. And that was the same that Plan Commission decided back in August, if you recall. We looked at other options, did some more research, and as Ned noted, Ryan did some research on similar communities, especially other university communities in the state, across Green Bay, Appleton, Oshkosh, and they don't have that provision to allow accessory dwelling units. Not saying that's, you know, the sole reason not to do it, but there is that provision currently that detached ADUs would be allowed for those who, again, are employed on a premise, or their immediate family. So again, there is a provision currently in there, but even that has some enforcement challenges, I'm sure, as well. But it's certainly something we can continue to look at, especially as we're having this discussion about kind of affordable housing issues and those around that. It's something that can still certainly continue to review and consider, and even dive deeper into some other options. I last worked for a community that did just that, and had several different kind of tiers, as it were, for ADUs, both detached and attached as well. But again, they too started very very restrictive in that situation, just to not just open the door to anything and everything. So that's an option as well, is to kind of look at maybe incrementally allowing some additional options moving forward. So All that to say, staff is certainly open to continuing the research on it, but again, I'll defer to Ned in terms of conversations with the neighborhood association. It sounds so that's not their intended preference at this point, to really open it up, and that's again consistent with what we're doing now.
Right, so the steering committee, they recommended, in theory, it's a good idea, but practically, whether it increases parking or just the enforcement issues, to not recommend in the plan. If you're wanting to think about this more, I would recommend that it would be more under the guise of research it. It doesn't sound like it's unanimous in terms of let's from past decisions that you've made on this issue. But if there is becoming more of an openness, I would say that if you want it in this plan, more to temper it with research. And again, if it's not in the plan, you can always look at it outside of the plan too. It doesn't have to be in the neighborhood plan. And the association will review this too, and they'll we can have them take a decision on it too.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you. I don't think it has to be in the plan, because I think we're going to have to address this citywide, and we continue to do the research on it, and I think we'll eventually arrive at some determination. When we do that, should be a citywide determination. So I don't know that it's necessary for you to have it in the plan.
Yeah, I would, if you don't mind, I would like kind of a consensus on that, because then we can go back to the neighborhood association when we meet with them and say, Plan Commission, felt that it doesn't belong in the plan, or that we should research it, or it does belong in the plan. Some direction on this issue, because I know it'll be brought up again at the public hearing probably.
I guess I would maybe take back to the committee, let them know Plan Commission probably months ago, things that we have to pursue it any longer. I know there's openness to talk about it, and maybe note that it's come forward to us twice now, and then not gone any further. So maybe we want to consider it a solution. I don't know. Maybe it still stays in the plan as a hope, but public planning. Yeah, Chairman.
Mr. Chair, I do think that I'm definitely interested in the topic. It's just that, is it really appropriate for this plan? That's, for me, that's up to the neighborhood more so. And going back to another point raised earlier, it's kind of a broader policy that I think would be more appropriate. But I do think the work that they're doing, talking about it, is helpful to us. So just want to put that out there.
It does note that it's your responsibility to be city.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Right, it'd be more that citywide type. I mean, we're getting these questions about 1980s properties more in suburban areas, if you will, and what can those families do? So these questions are popping up all over the city.
I think that if anything, it doesn't really need to refer to the Plan Commission's specific previous concerns about these other issues. I mean, other than it continues to be an area of study. It doesn't matter that it might have more parking, might have more this, might have more that. I think that gets too specific about what the commission had thought about in many sessions, and I think it can be there at the neighborhood's interest without such elaboration on what the planning commission had thought, other than there still is not a consensus about how to accomplish this citywide.
would agree. I think I'm comfortable with it coming out and comfortable with it making a bigger discussion later on, and I think that it's appropriate to put back into the hands of the neighborhood association too, and letting them direct us more if they feel like it needs to be put back in at a later time. Just some response on some of the other questions you had. I like that overview of the plan, the executive summary. I think that's something we can look at and use and talk about. I like incorporating that form-based planning for that third ward and also all of Eau Claire. I think that's a step, in the future for us, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Planning, part of the permit parking discussion and continuing with that and coming up with something that will work. It's finding a solution. Yeah, it was an incredible job on the report itself. It was detailed and well laid out.
Got a rep, Mr. Rosenberg's here. Would be a good time to have public input from the third ward? Or do you want to keep going with this for a little bit, or maybe we
No, I mean, as long as your concerns about the policy statements, the improvement strategies are being addressed, and that's really what the staff we're wanting to get some direction on from you guys.
certainly come back and continue discussions and questions and all that, but he's with us for a while tonight, maybe invite Mr. Rosenberg up and quiz him a little bit, answer questions or what have you.
So I brought the old plan in because I always carry it with me. I'm Kevin Rosenberg, 219 McKinley, chair of the Third Ward Neighborhood Association. And I asked to have the background put back in because a lot of times at Third Ward Neighborhood Association meetings, people are like, why are we anti-university, or why are we arguing with the city? And the simple answer is because the Third Ward Neighborhood Association formed itself to be a watchdog over the city and the university because of where we're located down there. And if you read anything about neighborhood associations, you'll find out that in order to be successful, they usually are focused on something, you know, be it a little bit negative in this instance. I don't think it has to be, but to be aware of it. The parking issue, I don't even like saying the word parking in a meeting in Eau Claire, because if you say parking at a Third Ward Neighborhood Association meeting, the rest of the meeting is taken up with people complaining about parking. So it's obviously been going on for a long time. And one of the ideas I had specifically, because I live on McKinley Avenue, when I moved there, when I bought my house, I didn't expect to ever park in front of my house. However, my street is getting destroyed out there, and we just looked at it now, and over the winter, the side where all the cars park, possibly there's some oil leakers that are parking there and destroying the pavement a little bit quicker. But all the building that the university has done, all those semis, all those gravel trucks, all those concrete haulers have been staged on McKinley Avenue, and our street has simply gotten destroyed way faster than it would have in a normal city situation. And it's tough as someone living there that can never use the street in front of their house to park or to have guests park, to know that I'm going to be assessed for all that damage to the street. So kind of the idea I had, I came up here from Chicago, and in Chicago we had some permit parking going on that didn't work. But what I was thinking about, and I would gather that most of the neighbors on my block might be for this as well, is monetizing our street. If the students are paying $300 to $500 for a parking spot in a Hibbard, which isn't even as close to the university as my street, those spaces have some monetary value, and we're not getting it now. And that's one of the things I was thinking about. We could actually put that in the plan. It could be a pilot program on, say, McKinley Avenue, or we could try something different on Garfield. But it is getting worse, and the situation's getting way worse on the other side of State Street with the neighbors over there. As far as the plan, Ned did a great job. Obviously, there's a ton of information in here. There are 2 steering committees. I argued with Ned originally. We have 14 people that volunteer to come to meetings, you know, once a month in the summer when it's nice out, in February where hardly anybody shows up. And those 14 people are elected by the neighborhood. And we actually have a renter on our steering committee, and we have a student on our steering committee by design, because we want to be inclusive. And that way when we say, you know, the vote was 7-4, you know that it's pretty representative of the people that live there. So the steering committee for the neighborhood association hasn't looked at this yet. Our next meeting is Wednesday, and already on the agenda is the Welcome Center. The new roundabout at Roosevelt has caused a bit of a controversy, and there will be a bunch of people at our meeting to discuss that as well. I'd like to take up part of this at that meeting and then hopefully finish it up at our next meeting and take a vote, just because of the amount of information that's here. As Ned indicated, with a smaller group of 7 people and a longer period of time focused just on the neighborhood plan that he wrote, we only got to page 70. And you know, since this one's been around since 2001 and the next one's going to be around for 10 to 15 more years, it would seem that we could take a little bit more time and get it right. So I'm here tonight to ask for another month to give us another opportunity.
Expound on, you mentioned that your neighborhood in Chicago tried the permit parking program and it didn't work. Why didn't it work?
I'm not sure why it didn't work. It was a suburb, a very close suburb of Chicago, and our government was a bit corrupt down there, so I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. But what we had was all the neighbors on the block got, say, 2 permits. And so if someone came to visit you, you had to run downstairs and give them one of your permits. And it only lasted for a short period of time. I know they're also doing it around the hospital down there, and it was a different system where the neighbors just had permits to park in front of their house. But, you know, I really think that we have something in place right now, and that would upset the cart even more, because if you stop people from parking in front of our houses, they're going to go to the other side of State Street. And maybe those people didn't buy their houses with that type of duress of extra parking over there. We certainly did. You know, we knew what we were getting into when we bought our houses. So it's a different situation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg. I guess I was wondering, and maybe Mr. Noel knows this too, but is there any reference at all to like the monetizing of parking in the plan in its current draft right now? It seems like I can't find it right away, but it seems like there was something.
There's a little touch on that, and we can revise that. What Kevin was saying a little more.
You know, it's changed. You don't have to have a parking meter, obviously. You can have the post at the end of the block, and you just type your number in there and pay that way. Or we could sell them, and people would have a permit or a sticker on their car. That'd be another way of doing it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. As far as timing, Ned, another month or so to continue working with. I know I kind of cut off the discussion earlier. Is there any discussion with Ned or more questions as far as process going forward then?
Yeah, I think the first thing is working with Kevin with the dates for the neighborhood association. If it's April 10th, what that would look like, and May 8th, making sure we're good there. And then once we have that feedback, set up that public hearing with you guys. So whatever that might be, whatever that date would be. So that the meeting with the neighborhood association will drive the process with you in terms of your meeting date.
I don't think there's any urgency with this body or the city council. Staff from the third ward.
Yeah, give them adequate time, because it is a large document, and you know, whether you got through it all yourselves, you know, it's it's pretty meaty, so we understand.
And then any specific questions you have?
That, I guess, unless there's any other questions or comments, we're on to the net zero energy guide discussion.
Okay. Yeah, so what is this all about? So the net zero energy, we gave you a memo related to this, but this would be a voluntary building guide that would help builders, architects, different tradesmen to design buildings that are basically more high performance. So, you know, what does that do? Improve property values, obviously energy use, indoor air quality, comfort, occupant health, while trying to meet the city's goals of 100% renewable energy and carbon neutrality by 2050. So those goals are long term. We really only have about, I think, one net zero energy house in the city. And so this guide would be, basically it's an aspirational type goals to try to create buildings that are more high performance. And you know, when we break down building stock, you know, 40% of the carbon emissions come from those buildings, whether it's electricity that's coming from a coal plant that powers the lighting, to you know, the heating that's being used for the furnace. It's interesting to look at the economics of these things, because that is one of the entrance barriers to these type of homes or commercial properties. And the Rocky Mountain Institute, if you're familiar with them, they're sort of like a sustainability building think tank. They have found with research with our climate, if you want to do a net zero energy ready home, so it's basically not a net zero energy ready or a home, but it's ready to be that way, it's about a 2% added premium without counting incentives. So in our case, that'd be like focus on energy incentives that you might be able to get back, like installation rebates and things like that. So if you wanted to do a full net zero home, roughly it's about going to cost you 10% more. So, you know, the economics in terms of upfront costs are going to be more, but if this is a brand new house that you intend to stay in, you know, for quite some time, or if you're a real estate developer and you want a Class A office building, you know, depending on the market segment, the guide is meant to begin someplace. So, you know, just a couple of photos, like what will this cover? We've hired an architectural firm out of the Twin Cities that specializes in this. They're actually working with Ramsey County right now to develop their own guide. And this would look at education. What is a net zero home? Basically, whatever it consumes, it either generates for renewable energy or it gets from the grid. So if you've been following Xcel Energy, now also has this carbon neutral goal that the city does. And Xcel is really ramping up more renewables on the grid. So if you didn't have the ability to, say, put solar or didn't want to put it on your house, you could actually get it from the grid by going on one of their renewable rates. So there's different ways to look at it, and that's why we want to set this up as a menu of options so that it's responsive to the actual building, especially if it's an existing building, because, you know, there's going to be different replacement needs along the way. A new furnace at a certain point, new lighting, you know, if you want to install electric vehicle charger in your garage. All these different decisions are a lot more complicated when it comes to an existing home. But for a new structure, you can plan and design all that up front. So we want to have this menu of strategies and different checklists, like, say, for solar readiness, for electric vehicle readiness, and resource links back to like Department of Energy and other resources within the guide to guide construction industry experts on on what they might want to do for their clients. So we'll look at residential and commercial. Also help the city with our municipal buildings to kind of think about this to the guide. It's funded by the Public Service Commission through a large grant that ties back into the Renewable Energy Action Plan that we're going to be starting soon. Zia and Greg, you're going to be on that. So this is a subcomponent plan to that larger plan. As I mentioned, scope residential and commercial is voluntary. We want to just start with educating. We don't want to mandate. We want to explain what it is, how it's possible, with possible future implications of how it actually may influence your own design review when it comes to projects. But we don't really know what that looks like yet. That's kind of more conversations with you guys when that time comes. And how the approval process would be is the City Council approved the Sustainability Advisory Committee to have this in their work program. But since it's dealing with the built environment, you guys will also need to approve it. So it will seek approvals from you, from Sustainability Committee, and then also City Council possibly. Again, tied back into the Renewable Action Plan. We'll assemble a small stakeholder task force, so different tradespeople, architects, builders, engineers, those kind of folks to really ask what are the barriers, what are the opportunities, what are you seeing in the marketplace, get all that maybe through surveys and a couple meetings to drive the actual guide. And that should start maybe in May and June. And also look at financing strategies, whether you take advantage of focus on energy rebates or, Excel also has rebates. But tonight we just wanted to let you know more what we're doing and that it fits back in with your own development review, and then seek any input from you at this early stage on ideas or concerns. And we'll be bringing back more information to you as we start to develop it. So if you have any thoughts on it, we're happy to take them.
Comments, questions?
Jeremy. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Noel. I was wondering about the topic of how we can kind of grow this sector and use this plan to do that. Is that part of it where it's kind of about a green jobs focus, or how to get new industries in town that can actually support this type of building in a robust way? Is that like somehow part of this?
Those kind of economic development numbers would be more put in the Renewable Energy Action Plan, where this development will go hand in hand with that. So strategies and goals will be developed in the Renewable Energy Action Plan, and then we can actually try to look at translating that back to jobs. There is an entity that is tracking jobs in our county for clean energy jobs. A lot of those jobs are energy efficiency related jobs, but I think, don't quote me, but our county had like maybe like 1,000+ jobs already. And a lot of them are, your HVAC installers, lighting professionals and things like that touch energy in some way, shape, or form. So we will ground it back into economic development opportunities, but that will be more related in the REAP plan, not in the Net Zero Guide. The Net Zero Guide is meant to be more of an action tool.
As a follow-up, it's going to be pretty accessible to those companies that are and builders and architects that are maybe not as trained in it.
Correct. Yeah, so one of the nice things that we liked about the architect's proposal that we selected was that they will do a training after this is all developed and try to have some like continuing education credits for AIA and so forth to get people, incentivize them to come to the training to learn more about how to put this into practice. So stay tuned for that, but that would be kind of the final outcome of this guide. We've met with the Chippewa Valley Home Builders Association too about this, and their input was, this is great. We talked about, some of the challenges and opportunities. Their feedback was don't mandate it. So, that's where we're at.
Comments, questions? about that. So we're on 2 code compliance items. Future agenda items.
I'll be gone next week, so it's switching around. So I'll be at the national conference. That's on the next week, so we're back on that.
Additions or corrections to the minutes? That's it. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.